The most successful people in the world all have one thing in common. They've learned how to think big by developing a perspective of possibility. And the good news is, we all have the potential to apply the same strategies to achieve amazing things in our work and lives. Hi, I'm Rob Hartnett, and as your Chief Possibility Officer and host, I'm here to inspire you to become the star of your world as a person of possibility, through learning how people from all areas of life are thinking big and chasing down their dreams. Today, I'm excited to have a great friend of mine, a great colleague, a very learned colleague, who's going to take us through his professional career and also his new business, which is very exciting. Would you please welcome to the main stage to the podcast, Mr. Richard Kohinga.
Very kind of you, Rob. Great to be here.
Richie, it's fantastic. You and I have had many conversations, and many times I've thought to myself, we should have recorded that. And I thought, let's do it. We've got to record one of these because I always find talking with you really insightful and always learn something from you. And I thought, it's no good me just having this. There's far smarter people than me that listen to this that would get so much more out of it. So let's take it back a little step here. So we're going to talk about your business, Clario, a little later, but I want to go back to where we first met. We met through professional services. Now, you've had a long and distinguished career in professional services, working for one of the big four. Just take us back. How did you get into working for one of the big four organizations? And I know you work globally. So take us back and tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, happy to. So I had a career before KPMG. My first job out of uni was with GE, into financial services. Worked with some really smart, driven people. I then transitioned into government and played some advisory roles there. Passionate, really ethical people, right? And so when I joined KPMG, it was bringing together the best of these two things I admired in government and industry, which is I worked with people who were just so hardworking, super smart, but also had a real sense of fiduciary responsibility to their client base and people with great credibility who I loved working with. And so that's why, I did have a long career at KPMG. I think I found my home.
And you worked across the world too, didn't you? I mean, it wasn't just one place.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So I was with KPMG for 17 years and people think, wow, how does that work? But it was multiple roles in multiple locations. So I worked in 20 different countries. I was based for the time in Asia, but then 7 years in the Middle East, and so there was just so much diversity. These big businesses create tremendous opportunity. If you're prepared to embrace new experiences and have a go.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. I think that's one of the things. I mean, and I just repeat that again. You said it was 17 years, wasn't it, at KPMG in total?
I was a child prodigy. I started my career when I was 12, Rob.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. They were accused of a bit like Nike of recruiting people like you, even when you were 12 years old, straight out of boarding school, and you raced off. Look, a phenomenal career in there. I think that's very true with some of the big consulting firms, especially some of the younger audience, Gen Zs and things, that they sometimes is they like to transition and get new roles and do different things. But sometimes inside a big org like a KPMG and PwC and Deloitte and the others, you can actually have multiple careers under the same umbrella if you're prepared to kind of move around or learn or change roles and career inside the business. So I say there's still lots of exciting stuff you can do under the one umbrella. And I spent quite a bit of time, nowhere near that, but even places like HP and Apple, there was those roles. I had 3 roles in at HP, and it was one of the great businesses. You could move around if you showed interest, you had passion, and you could keep the same sort of IP. They didn't want you to leave either. And I met people who've been 30, 40 years in that business, and they'd had multiple roles through it. So really, I'm not sure if that's going to be much more of the future, but it was certainly back then.
Well, one of the things that my government experience taught me, there are people had been in certain roles or departments for 10, 15, 20 years, and they had the organizational history, and were able to, you'd ask them a question and they go, well, 5 years ago we did this and 6 years ago we did that. So powerful. And so my second last role, I was in the one job for 7 years, but people would ask me a question, I go, "Oh, you need to speak to so and so, or you need to do this." And so there's a lot of general counsels and heads of legal I work with have been in those roles, for a big chunk of time, and they are just so valuable to
Yeah,
businesses
it's
because they have so
incredible.
much corporate knowledge.
Yeah, an IP. So what did you do from a uni perspective though? And people are wanting to know, what degree did you do? What was your study before you got into to GE, for example?
So I actually wanted to be a journalist. So I studied literature and political science, in Australia, then the United States, and came back and I actually did start my career in journalism, so freelancing before moving into communication roles. And it was when you're in these media management, communication roles, advisory roles. I looked across, and I was working with marketers, and marketers have a great way of organizing themselves, like linking a vision, objectives, strategy, tactics. And so I thought, I want to learn how to do that. And so I completed a master's in marketing, and it was really the combination of communications and marketing skills which led me to KPMG, because I ran in and was in these pursuit roles where you run large proposals. And so you're around, packaging up ideas and value propositions.
Yeah, that's incredible. I actually didn't know the background that you did, that you were looking to do journalism first off. So it's amazing what you sometimes do in uni and where you actually end up. And I like your step along the way. We went back and did the marketing element as well when you discovered some interest in that. It's one of the things I always say to people. Passion comes after action, right? So, or another way of saying it, action precedes passion. You can't actually get passionate about something or work out something that you want to do more of unless you actually do something and take some sort of action, which is a clear example of what you did then. So let's move forward. So you've done, you were going to become a journalist. You got into that, got into space. You did GE, you did government. You did a long stint in career. Started at the age of 12. Of course, you did your degree when you were 5, which is amazing. They're working this back in my audience. They're very smart. Then you did 17 years at KPMG, and then you went and joined essentially a business. Now, this would be Plexus, where you started with them. Was it in like what attracted you to leave KPMG and move to do something different?
Well, there's always push-pull factors, right? So I came back from overseas, done lots of interesting things, and rejoined the Australian practice. And it was a sense of going backwards, not forwards. So doing the same things that I've been doing before. And I remember bumping into someone in the lift in Sydney, and they said, the KPMG, and they said, "Hey, Rich, have you been on leave? I haven't seen you for a while. I've been out of the country for 7 years." 7 years. Obviously made a big impression in their life, but it was the sense of I think I need to do something different. And so I caught up with a mate of mine who ran a recruitment company, and I said, "Listen, I want to build out some technologies. I've got some ideas around that." And he said, "Well, you're not a technologist by trade. You've consulted, but wouldn't it make sense for you to actually join a technology business and understand, how solutions work from inside, surrounded by smart people?" And I said, "Yeah, that does probably make sense." And he said, "Well, great. Have I got the job for you?"
Nice.
And so, yeah, well played. But he was right. So Plexus, it was a wonderful business. Andrew Mellett, the CEO, focused in on improving the law, and specifically in-house legal teams, and providing two ways. One was through seconded resources, so helping them manage their workflows through that flexible resource pool, but also through legal technology and their gateway solution, which I got visibility of and really understood it from an in-house legal perspective, and that was super helpful. But the thing that Andy mainly got me to focus in on was the secondment business. So I ran that for quite a few years, and we did really well. And ultimately, the decision was made to sell that business to enable the technology business to flourish. And so I was involved in that process, which is how we ended up moving to Axiom in 2022.
So tell me a little bit about the 17 years at KPMG. Obviously, got a lot of you're obviously very successful there. You decided to move to you joined Plexus though, which was and having I've not met Andy Mallett, but I've read a lot of his stuff and seen the way he operates, and I've caught up with you a number of times when you were at Plexus. But take us through what was the difference in terms of the way that Andy ran that business, and being a much smaller business, of course. What was the big differences between the why you were doing things at KPMG and the way that Plexus ran?
So KPMG had there was so much support, so much capacity for help, right? And beautiful locations and buildings, and the ability to travel well. But in a startup environment, you've got to be lean, mean, fighting machine. And so you had to, as a kind of senior person, really operate independently and self-manage and self-help. So that's probably the biggest difference. You just have to get on with it. But the other big difference is if you can convince the CEO to do something in a startup environment, it gets done, right? Where in a larger business, often it's about creating a coalition of the willing. And so selling in an idea that others can benefit from, but that can be a slower process. It should be a slower process. So it's just the speed of action. You can be super innovative in a small startup environment for sure. And that's exciting because you can get things done.
Yeah, and I think that definitely that can work and get things done quickly if it's a good idea. The other thing though, which you don't have in that startup environment, you don't have that KPMG brand that you go in with. You're coming in with, who are you again? Where do you fit? That kind of really going back to that original sort of sales thing of who are you, what do you do, and why does it matter? Those three great questions. If I remember, maybe I'm picking your brain a bit here, but I remember you guys getting really good at that and being that real value proposition about being able to quickly get to the right people and be able to give you a value proposition really quickly. That was something Andy drove, if I remember, and he was quite specific about how you did that.
Yeah, 100%. So the superpower of that business was really about engaging the client base and just getting meetings, just meeting people, having people want to meet you.
Yeah.
And then wanting to meet you again because they had a really great outcome in terms of the conversations they're having with you. And so, 100% correct, Rob. It's a lot tougher when you don't have a big brand behind you with the assumptions of the value that organization is going to bring to a conversation, and you have to jump on the phone and convince someone that it's worth catching up and quickly. So that was a skill, and they've got a whole methodology around that, and it was just a fantastic learning opportunity.
Yeah, it was really about. I remember you talking about getting them on the phone and being able to get meetings. I think that's a really great one. But then being able to sort of almost challenge and bring insight straight away to that person you're talking to, who's probably not heard of you, not really know what you guys' value proposition is, to be able to bring something that kind of shook their world a little bit to go, geez, these guys are worth taking a meeting with. It's really the game, wasn't it?
Yeah, and you know sales strategy as well as anyone. You're an absolute subject matter expert. But I was Miller Hyman trained at KPMG, and it was the Challenger model at Plexus. And what's brilliant about the Challenger system is it's really, as you say, it's going in with a hypothesis about what their big issues are likely to be. These challenges, opportunities, and if you do that really well, you're actually inside that person's head, and it fast tracks the whole process of saying, well, how can I help? Well, you embed the answer if you really understand their business super well, and then everyone's time poor, right? And so if you can fast track to that and say, look, I think these could be your areas of focus for you, and they go, yeah, actually, you're bang on. Then you can have brilliant follow-up conversations.
Yeah, I love that fact. It's really weird because I used to teach. I was looking back some of my old sales strategy workshops I ran back in about 2010, and they're all full of Challenger. And they're actually in Miller Hyman workshops. Because I love the Challenger model that's CEB built around the 5 different salespeople. And it used to shock people. I'd put the 5 up, and I'd say, the one in a tough market, the one that actually died and falls away is the relationship builder. And people go, what? How's that happen? And I'm like, well, because they're not really adding a lot of value. And in a tight recession, around like we had, especially overseas, more so than Australia, around 2008, 2009. I mean, relationship building was nice, but you actually had to get a deal over the line. And so you had to bring insight and understanding. And so that's the way I've always sold anyway, because I just think, why would you waste someone's time if you can't bring them some insight or some real questions? And I think a lot of the background behind the Challenger salesperson, which then obviously became a methodology, was around just being super curious, right? Just being really curious about how do you make money and why are you doing it this way, and if you thought about doing it that way. I have always done that, but I've come to realize this a lot. That's just me. So not everybody actually does that. You do it. I know you do it as well. I've always gone so well. But I think when you're super curious, all you have to be is just don't make assumptions and go, oh, actually, I've seen this business doing something different. How come you guys don't do that? That's going. I know your business so well that I've looked at another one that's similar, and you guys, there's an opportunity you're missing out on, or there's a problem that actually you could solve that you're not solving, or did you know that? And you just bring that kind of interest, and sometimes it lands, and most times it does. Sometimes they're ready to do something, sometimes they're not. And I think I've had definitely in the startup businesses that I was involved at, even previous to you and I getting together. And I was a couple of I was in a big ISP startup, and that was it. You just had to be able to get you had to cut to the quick pretty quickly.
Well, great conversations are always about great questions. I ran a client insights program for KPMG across the Middle East and South Asia, and I'd go out and meet a whole lot of CEOs and managing directors. And I had a formula of questions that I would pose to them, and primarily because I can then, at the back end of that, extrapolate out some general observations about the market, because you can quantify it. But I would ask these questions, and often they give quite a technical answer that I was not knowledgeable enough to unpack. And so I would just sit there in silence, trying to understand what they just said. And they would fill the space.
That's right.
The concept of golden silence.
Yes.
And then they would keep going. And I realized, these people don't actually get listened to very often. They're 100%. In quite lonely, isolated roles. They're deeply intellectual, and being prodded that way can actually really think, have the headspace to really think about their business. And so I came out some of those conversations where people were like, I really appreciated what you had to say. That was that was really good. And I thought, but I didn't say anything. What I did was give them the opportunity to share. Right. And I have a foot in two camps. I love the Miller Hyman and the ability to focus on long-term relationships.
Yeah,
because that's my inner marketing. Probably inner marketing soul coming through there, which is about focus on developing your client base. That's where most new business is going to come from. And perhaps that's a KPMG truism as well. But I blended it with my Plexus experience, which is that's all well and good, but you need to actually go and meet new people. You've got to get outside the walls, right?
Yeah.
And then if you're going to do that, then you've got to have something compelling to say, and you need how to close deals.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. In fact, if you're anyone reads the Challenger book, you'll see it's exactly one of the points that the authors make in it is say, hey, we're not saying you don't have a relationship, they say just have it with a point, like and get outside, meet new people, bring some insight to it, So it's a good point I make in chapter 1. You remind me, there was a consultant colleague of mine many years ago got introduced to another person, another CEO. So he's working with a CEO. Another CEO said, hey, there's a guy you should meet. He's expanding his business, blah, blah, blah. I think you guys would get on well. So he takes this meeting with this other CEO referred in, and this CEO is just deep diving. And my colleague is going, I don't know why I'm here. I actually can't respond to anything this guy's saying. He's like so deep in the weeds. I don't know what to say. And he's thinking to himself, God, this was great to meet him, but I just don't think there's anything for me here, and maybe we should wind this up. And as at the end of 45 minutes, he really hasn't contributed very much at all. He literally was about to get out of his seat and say, hey, great to meet. I'm glad we got connected, but look, nothing really here. But if something comes up around these areas, feel free to reach out to me. He's literally about to say that. The other CEO goes, hey, great meeting. I really enjoyed the discussion. It was very valid. It allowed me to kind of think about a few things which I haven't had and, the bandwidth to do. I sense a real connection with this. There's a couple of projects I'd like you to get started on in the next month if you've got availability. Let me introduce you to a couple of my team.
Wow.
Would you be okay to go? And my colleague goes, absolutely, ready to start.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
And he said if our CEO hadn't got his word in, he was about to exit. And again, he said the same thing, that he realized that this CEO, and again, this is very true when you get the senior leaders, a lot of people are just coming through their door going, sign that, do this, I've got a problem here, can you fix that bit over there? Very, very little that people come in and go, ask a good, insightful question, which you clearly did at the start, and then let them go and listen with intent. Now, you kind of downplayed it saying I didn't have much to say, but I will guarantee you that you were using great physiology in terms of nodding, agreeing, maybe taking a few notes that allowed that other person to go, hey, this someone's genuinely listening to me, which you would have been doing because I know you well enough. That's a real skill in itself. And even though your head might have been going, God, I don't know where this guy's going with this, or I'm not sure I can actually come back with a really good answer. The fact that you could actually listen with intent is an amazing skill, and it's underrated.
Yeah, we're in total agreement.
Yeah. Now let's talk about. So you do really well at Plexus. You exit out of that. I think you took a small break from that, and then. But I wanted to ask one question, because you did the consulting stuff, and Plexus was very much about the legal profession, and your new business is about the legal profession. What do you love about the legal profession?
It's a boring old answer, but it's people, of course. Lawyers can be quirky, they can be demanding, but they can also be just an absolute delight to work with. And so I've loved my exposure to the law. And it goes back to maybe a bit of the KPMG thing. Super smart, hardworking, driven people who, want to make the world a better place. And so, it's been fantastic. I love
what you just said. I think that's surprising. I think people who will be listening will be surprised the way you actually said that. I love the legal profession because it's because of the people and the people in it, and just the things you said then. So that would be probably a revelation to what the profession kind of puts out. Like, it doesn't appear to be like a real people-orientated area, and also people wanting to make the world a better place. I actually think that's true. So it's amazing that that's one of the reasons that you like them, and you come across them often like that.
I can have a bit of a frustrating morning, and then jump into a meeting with one of my clients and just come away just so pumped up.
That's fantastic.
Because we've been able to help them, or just listening to what they're focusing in on and what they're trying to do. And no, 100%. Yeah, you're right. Maybe there is some cynicism about the law, but it's totally unfounded. Because people who you think about what they're training, what attracted a lawyer to go in, to go through the pain of completing their degree and going through the training. For most people, they genuinely see it as a pathway to making business world better, smarter, more effective, and that comes through the people I work with all the time.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And I also think it's a great, bit like accounting in many ways. Doing a law degree can also set you up for so many things. I've known so many people who are doing different things in their lives now, but came off the back end of law, and they're great people. Like, they're great people, and they practice for a while, or in corporate or in private practice, and they've gone and done different things. So it's one of these great bases. Now, tell me about the startup. So you left, you had a bit of a break, you came back. What then inspired you to go, hey, you know what? I'm going to start my own business, and you're going to start Clario. Tell me about that process.
I think I was always edging there. So meaning the shift from KPMG to Plexus was about having more freedom to do things. But even in working for Plexus and then Axiom Law, I still have bosses, and so I thought, oh man, if I had my own business, I could be as super innovative and even more helpful to my client base. And because I had all these amazing ideas, right?
Right.
And so that was really the big driver. It was just the freedom. I think the second thing to say is just the commercial opportunity, particularly in 2025 as we, transition into an AI powered world.
Mm,
You want to have some sort of control over your destiny,
yes.
and the best way to do that is to run your own business. In my mind,
Yeah.
um, particularly if you can find a niche and you can do something that fill a gap that and do it better than everyone else. And I had experienced what it looks like to sell a business, right?
Right.
The commercials of that.
Yeah.
So, I think they were, they're the two reasons. It was
Right.
the freedom to really create something that the market, that my clients need,
Yeah.
and then the commercial upside.
Yeah. Fantastic. So tell us, elevator pitch now, Claro, what does it do? What's it exist for?
So Clario actually is Latin for clarity.
Yeah.
It means, and we see ourselves bringing clarity to in-house legal teams around how they resource themselves,
Yeah.
but also how they leverage technology to deliver even more value to their business. So we are a secondment business. That's what we're known for in the market,
Yeah.
meaning we provide lawyers to fill gaps, to special projects, skill sets that they don't have on a temporary basis. We also recruit, and we are legal consultants. And the legal consulting side is around this AI transition. And it was, I spoke to over 100 general counsels and heads of legal before launching the business.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was just in the spirit of, how can I help? What's not out there that's helping you? And it was this AI journey that just popped up again and again and again. And so they were saying, where do I start? How do I integrate it into my legacy systems? You know, how can you guide my team? And so that's the third element of our business, and probably the most exciting part of it.
I was going to say, is that part would be the fastest growing, I imagine, of your business?
Uh, I think 100% it is. It's the conversations. 9 out of 10 people I speak to will want to launch into that conversation.
Yeah. What specifically are they wanting to know from it? Is it about what is AI, or how fast is it going, or are they asking questions? Where do you see it being the best fit inside their practice?
Well, you can't go to a conference now without there being some section devoted to AI and the influence it's going to have over the
Mm.
industry. But often those conversations can be quite high level and motherhoody. So
Yeah.
it's sort of going down a level and saying, okay, great. But what do you mean? What
Yes.
specifically can this do
Mhm.
if in terms of my team and our legal output? And so it's that's really the conversation that people are looking for help with. Most, if I think about most people I speak to, they probably fit in three camps. One would be it's all hype and don't see it playing a significant role in what I do. I'm an advisor. I bring judgment in
Yeah.
very bespoke matters. I don't have millions of contracts to churn out. Another group would be, no, we get it, but I've got these. I already have legal technology. I've invested a lot of money, resource, and political capital to develop that, and so they're trying to work out, well, where's the gaps and how can AI help and how do we integrate that? I mean, the third group would be uninhibited by legacy technologies and been really open. And
Right.
so they're trying to say, well, great, where do I start? And so probably they're that's the cohort. Well, that is probably the cohort where I'm most excited about having conversations with,
Mm.
because it's going to be so easy for them to jump in.
Yeah, and they're also, I think, open to it as well. Even in your first example you gave there, I actually think that is exactly where AI is going to play a space. If you're just thinking you're doing judgments and based on history and yeah, I think AI very quickly. Well, we're seeing how fast it's moving now. I definitely think it's a space. I think one of the other areas I was going to ask you about with the legal profession, there's been a number of cases where we've seen AI go wrong in the legal profession, where they've either abused the privilege or they've outsourced some things to AI, and AI has not got it right or has doubled up. And I've seen AI in contracts not doing so well. We've seen, I think, some cases in front of with judgments and the like where AI has been called out that the firm used AI. Have you seen things like that where they've not quite got it right?
Well, we've all read about them. So personally, no, I haven't. But in terms of, it's natural for our profession to think about the risk, the downside, because the responsibility of in-house legal teams is to create the rail guards, the safeguards for the business to operate without issues around data integrity and privacy and misinformation. So it's right that we focus in on that.
Yeah.
But I think the challenge with this technology is it's just the speed of growth, and it's mind-boggling. So what you utilized 6 months ago compared to today, and what's likely to be available to us in 6 months' time, right? It's very hard to get your head around that. So the idea that that AI is going to be problematic and create all these errors that you're going to have to check and double check, I think is not going to be the case going forward. Well, not to the same degree. And I think that you'll always need to check and double check and have processes around things. I'm not suggesting you don't do that, but the upside, the value, it will transform the way legal services are going to be delivered 100%.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think some of the breakthrough stuff, even you would have probably seen the tweet about ChatGPT 5 last week when it was asked a question, and the user posted this, I think, on X, and he said he asked for this question. They didn't put what the question was. It would have been interesting to know what that was, but it did post a question, a reasonable question, and it actually paused for 34 seconds and then came back with the answer. Not sure I can help you with this one. This is probably beyond what I can do. That's like an absolute first. It would always usually hallucinate or come back with something of some description and ask you for more guidance. And so it got a bit of attention that it actually started to think and go, you know what, I had a look around and that question you asked me was pretty good, and no, I actually can't help you with that. That's almost getting to the point about self-correction. That's and I think your point about what we're seeing now, that what we're going to see in 6 months is going to be vastly different. And I couldn't agree more. And that makes it hard to plan, though, doesn't it? Do you find some clients then go, actually, let's just hold back, or they're just in kind of a watching brief?
I think most people are very early on in their journey, and so they're grappling with those fears and concerns, but also trying to understand how it can help. But most people, like the vast majority, and that's a great example you gave. We have a close working relationship with Pathfinder, which is an organization that really helps organizations embed AI-powered technologies. And they do that by running these amazing discovery workshops where they get people thinking about the problems they're trying to solve and how AI can help and educate them on that. But their CEO gave that example recently about how previously ChatGPT would say, yep, here's your answer, where it's transitioning to saying, well, here's an answer, but it could also, there's some nuance to it.
Yes.
And then it'll go further and say, look, I don't know, maybe that's a very difficult question to answer, and here's some things for you to explore. But he also said, prompt it.
Yeah.
So accept it, that it's almost like a dialogue. And so it's okay, that's interesting, go deeper.
Yeah.
Or that's interesting, explore this.
Yes.
And it's that educating ourselves around being able to prompt AI that's where the real skill is going to be.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with you, and it's really fascinating. I've been running a few workshops with some clients, especially in the banking space. It's really interesting if I've got multi generations in my group, and you'd be familiar with this. And we were talking about value propositions and the like, and actually generating like a VBR, valid business reason, a way to kick off a meeting, things like this. And we are just working out industry trends and doing that challenger type, question. What would be what's one we could use? And it's really fascinating. The Gen Z, first thing I do is open up the laptop and bang on to Copilot or Perplexity. And I've got the boomers on the other side of the room, get the flip chart up going, I reckon this one worked. It's fascinating. I'm just looking at both of them, right? And so what was interesting with the Gen Z is they came up with a couple of ideas, which they clearly knew they're off Copilot. I encourage that. And I read it out to me and I go, hey, this is what Copilot said. What do you reckon, Rob? And I go, it's not impressive at all. Right. And this is a group I know quite well. So they're very open to be challenged. So I said, that doesn't impress me, that one. And so they literally went straight back to Copilot and go, this doesn't impress us at all. And then Copilot came up with a wrapper. So and again, it's like that prompt. The prompt was she just said, I just took your prompt because it doesn't impress us at all. Like, do this better, this part,
We knew each other in previous lives, but I used to do sales training at one point.
Yes.
Partners. And I don't know how I'd go about it now because people would be fact checking you in the moment and, be on their phones and, cross-referencing things. It'd be very difficult. It'd be very difficult. I think about all the different professions where AI can help, but it can also undermine you in a small kind of way.
In some ways, yes, but in some ways, I find it an absolute bonus for sales training because what it does, and it should do, and it's still not quite there yet, is really take a lot of the hack and the grind work out. So if you're thinking about, you want to research a client, you can now become a student of the industry and a student of the client very quickly. In terms of the trends that are affecting them, what the market's doing, what business is doing, really, you can get that stuff up there. Now, the art is in how you translate that into a VBR, like a valid business reason to kick off a meeting, what your next line of questions will be, or how do you get their attention in the first place? Because without attention, you can't educate, right? So it's the old AIDA thing. If you got attention, then I can educate and then I can make a change. So how do you get their attention? How do you get them that stuff we talked about earlier when you're in a startup? Well, AI allows you to do, if you know how to use AI, if you know how to use the prompts, to your point, you can get really quickly to the nub of it, which is what this team was doing. And it was just fascinating seeing how the two groups went about it, right? And the boomers were like literally writing it up. And I said, well, that's interesting. Let's go with this group first. And I said, how did you go about this exercise? And they said, this is how we use Copilot. And the other group were like, God, we never thought about Copilot. That's the big win. And one of the wins of that meeting that I did, a sales training I did, was the fact that opening up the fact that AI to a whole group of people whose natural first place wasn't to go to AI, whereas the Gen Zs, their first place was to go to AI.
What we're drilling into here is learning pathways. The people who are going to benefit the most from these technologies are going to be those who are open and curious, to use your word, and can invest and have the time to invest in themselves. Yeah. So one of the things that I was really fortunate to do when I finished with the Axiom business, I took nearly 12 months off, traveled the world and had some wonderful adventures. But I also took time out to retool and to learn a lot. And so it was an incredible luxury that I need to thank my mortgage for funding, but it was definitely, it's been a strategic advantage for me. So I think that the challenge is, how do you keep learning? Because all the people I work with are incredibly busy. And how do they carve out time for themselves? That's a challenge. And I think that's what they got. But that's what they got to do.
They've got to do it, and I think that's exactly right. So what you've got to do there, and I love the fact you did that. So you took some time out and you retooled, and you had a bit more ability to go and do that and take more time to do it. But the reality of it is, everything, if we're intentional about something, we get it done. As humans, and you just got to say, I've got to be intentional about retooling. I've got to be intentional about unlearning and relearning. If that becomes intentional, then you will carve out time for it. And so you look at anyone who's successful in anything they do, from sport to business to building businesses to getting mastery of a craft, even if they work for a corporate, they carve out time. They're intentional about carving that time out. It doesn't get interrupted. It doesn't get rolled over. It doesn't get distracted. It gets done. And so, as I say, what gets measured gets done. Put some goals in there. But you're exactly right. You have to be intentional about carving that time out. One of the leadership gurus I work with, John Maxwell in the US, calls it the magic of margin. And it's a really interesting concept. And what it is that you have your BAU stuff you're doing all the time, like we all do. That takes up a chunk of your life. And especially as you get in the leadership positions, you have this time you carve out for yourself. Well, that's actually not margin. That's just stuff that you need to do to do your job. And you need to do it where the buck stops with you. And it doesn't matter if you're you or I or Richard Branson. There's just some stuff that you and I have to do and only we can do. You got to carve that time out. So BAU, you have personal leader time. Margin is on top of that. And the difference is that margin is basically all the areas of what you can do in your life. So if your whole capability is full, if your BAU is completely full to the brim, you have no time for margin. You have no time for yourself. That's a fast track to burnout. Right. So the ability is to carve out his BAU, his leader time, and he's about 10% at the top, which is for retooling, for being more strategic. And it can be as simple as you take 30 minutes in the morning when you're having your coffee on your own, you're doing some retooling there. It could be some time on the weekend you carve out for yourself. It doesn't matter. It's very personal, the way people do it. Sometimes it's actually on a train trip. They carve out that particular time to get the headphones in, but it's dedicated for the retooling, which you did, but it actually took it had some great chunk of time to dedicate to it. But it's the same concept.
Oh, the most successful people I know invest in themselves.
Yeah, that's it.
A mate of mine sold a business recently for $150 million, which is a lot of money.
Yes, nice chunk of change.
Right. And so I spent some time with him and his buddies, who are also really super successful people. And it reminded me of the quote from the entrepreneur, John Hone, who said, the average of the 5 people you spend most of your time with.
Yeah.
And so I went on a golfing trip with these guys, and they were all sort of thinking the same way, which is, how do I improve myself? How do I help people around me? And they're still learning. And these guys were all in their 50s and 60s.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that so inspiring. So I mean, the other thing, I caught up with a health coach, and I was saying, I'm not disciplined enough. I need to, work harder, get fitter. And he said, it's not discipline. It's that you don't value yourself enough. And so you think it's more important to run the kids to school or,
right.
whatever else you're doing, rather than spending an hour, in the morning getting fit. I thought, that's fair. And so prioritizing your own learning is really about saying, I'm important. And if I do this, I'll be able to make a better contribution to the business.
Yeah, and a better contribution to yourself. And I think the other point you said, your buddies made the point, was they wanted to keep learning, and also they wanted to keep growing other people as well, growing themselves and growing others. And I think that's also helps us as we get better and retool and relearn. We're actually more use for other people, even those who are closest to us as well. So I think it's a good point. Hey, speaking of people who are close to us, you've gone into business with your wife. Is that right?
I have. Yeah. I have.
Now we're taking it to a new level in discussion. Tell me how that came about, and how's it working? Do you have any ground rules? And I'm keen to understand a bit more about that.
So how did it happen? Tracy, my beautiful wife, and I walked the Camino de Santiago last year, and on it she said, we're talking about this business, and she said, I'd love to help. Now, she's a heavy hitter in her own right. She was the managing director of a market research firm. She had senior roles with EY. She was the Australian trade representative to Qatar, and definitely could help the business.
Yeah.
And so she's come on board to drive client insights. So we want to be an insights-driven business,
yes,
and be able to bring that, bring great thinking to our client base. And so that's her job. In terms of how it's working out, well, it's it's a journey, right? Yeah, she's we are very collaborative in our how we raise our four daughters, and everything is absolute team orientated.
Mm,
But we sort of worked out early on, someone has to actually be in charge of this business.
yeah.
You can't, and so I've had to. It's funny. I've had to say, well, look, I'm technically I'm the boss,
Right.
and, and and so that's a different dynamic,
Yeah.
and we've sort of worked our way through that. And it was funny. So for example, I asked her to do a couple of things, and I didn't hear back, and I thought, oh, that's funny, because normally when I ask someone who works for me to do something, they report back, and so I ended up sending her an email and saying, hey, can you I'm just following up that thing that I asked her about. And she responded in a really funny way. She said, oh, dear Mr. Kohinga, I'm very sorry that I didn't respond more immediately to, your request. But we've worked out our demarcation lines, and how to push things forward. I mean, the other thing I would note, and those who work with family may relate, uh, the challenge of being able to switch off and anyone who runs their own business for that matter.
Of
And
course.
so I'm really good at switching off. And so if I go to walk the dogs, as I do every day, I'm not thinking about work and I'm not talking about work. But when Tracy joins me, she'll often see it as an opportunity to say, oh, I've been thinking about this idea.
Right.
About, you've got to keep the saw sharp, and you do that
Yes.
by having time out, by
Yeah.
being able to refresh yourself. And so that's a discipline in itself that we're trying to work our way through.
Yeah, fantastic. I think that's awesome. And then you've also run a couple of summits in Sydney and Melbourne. You did those in person. I think a couple of luncheons you ran just over in the last couple of weeks. How did they go? What was some the insights from that? Why did you do it first of all? Because you could have done it virtually, but you did it in person. Were they valuable experiences for you and your clients?
We've had some fantastic feedback. So yeah, we had uh, two roundtable luncheons, Sydney, Melbourne, about upwards of 50 general counsels and heads of legal joined us at those, and it was really to do two things. Firstly, it was AI focused,
Yes.
and so I can talk to you all day long, but it's really valuable when you hear from your peers
Mm,
about what they're doing, what their challenges are, and so it was creating a forum to do that. And there's nothing like face to face. Joe, I've missed that. I feel like it dropped off, after COVID,
yeah.
and people just loved it. Loved the ability to actually sit across from someone and hear what's happening in their life, and what they're focusing in on. Um, uh, the CEO from Pathfinder was our guest speaker, and just a
Right.
fabulous subject matter expert and charismatic guy. And so he really set that conversation up as well. Why did we do it? A little bit about giving back, and
Mm,
so um, helping the industry think about how to embrace these new technologies.
yeah.
But obviously, we want to be able to help as well, and so and lean in and help their businesses where we can. And so it's positioning us to do that.
Yeah, no, I think it's really great and interesting on the AI one. A firm I was involved with, we ran a breakfast recently, and for a number of senior leaders, a bit similar to what you did, and we are just talking about the future of work, and of course AI was a key part of that. But what was really interesting was talking to some of the attendees, and the feedback was, "Oh, that was so refreshing. I'm not as far behind as I thought I was." So listening to my other peers, and we're all kind of in the same boat. And I was just thinking, oh my God, everyone's going to be so far ahead of us. I think I'm dragging I'm slow in the business. I realize that no, everybody's actually working out where we should put our processes, what's the most area of urgency for AI. We're all in it. And it was just so refreshing. I'm so actually empowered to go back to my LT and go, you know what, we're on the right path. We're doing the right thing. We're doing this, and this, and I've made some more contacts. And so it was really interesting just to get that. And I think you wouldn't get that in a virtual environment as well. So doing that in person to be able to actually talk and then let it, and the session, a nice little startup at the start by us, but then it really took a life of its own, and people were just literally peers just shooting the breeze on where they're actually very open and collaborative as well.
Yeah, I think the same thing happened for us. The conversation was set up, but then it was wonderful to just watch people
Right.
ask questions, make observations, and everyone's early on in the journey.
Yes.
Everyone.
Yeah.
Right. So the idea of being left behind, I don't think that's the case in 2025. I do think though, there's absolute logic to being an early adopter.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I
And
think so.
change can happen to you, or you can initiate it.
Yeah.
And if you initiate it, then you have more control over what it looks like.
Yeah, and you're definitely going to learn more as well. I mean, this is not, there's no silver bullet here, which some people think. I've seen that. That's a couple of things I've run into is people think it's the silver bullet or the panacea or a problem. It's actually not. It's a long way to go to that yet. But you've got to get involved. As I said to you, you've got to take action first, have a go, find out what's really urgent or where you want to play with it, and then play with it. And there's absolutely, it will definitely change the way you do things, and you'll certainly come away learning more for the next time, because as you said earlier, it's evolving. Like what we're working with now is nothing like we're going to see in 6 months. And I think it was even Sam Altman himself from OpenAI. I mean, he said a point that I think it was late last year. He said, "Oh, this is the dumbest AI will ever be. Like what you're using now is so agricultural to where we'll be in 12 months or 24 months. This is really bad what you're seeing now, but we're all using it. Here's the vision of where it's going to go."
It's really difficult for humans to get their hand around exponential growth compared to linear growth, and so we just don't know what it's going to look like, right? But we can't even conceive it.
Yeah.
And so it's a bit like, when you first got your mobile phone to what it looks like now, or any technology. And so, and that's exciting. I'm really excited about that. And I know that a lot of people are as well.
Yeah. So absolutely. Absolutely. Now tell us, where can people find out a lot more about Clario? How can we find out more about you and Clario? Where can people go to?
Well, we've built out a lovely little website. So, jump on and clario.com.au, you'll find us. And of course, we're on LinkedIn, and try and create a presence there. And we'd love to have conversations about if there's anything we can do to help you resource your team, and if you're starting your AI journey, and if there's anything we can help there.
Yeah, so good one. We'll put all that in the show notes. Richard, fantastic to have this conversation. I knew it'd be great insights as always, and I love the journey you're on with your wife as well. Although you're the boss, we made that very clear. So hopefully, when Tracy listens to this,
in the work front, maybe.
Well, you did say technically I'm the boss, so I think you gave yourself an out on that one. So yeah, really great, mate, and thanks so much for your time today.
Awesome, Rob. Thanks, mate.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the It's All Possible podcast. You can contact me at rob@robhartnett.com, or my website, robhartnett.com, or on LinkedIn. Remember to check out the previous seasons and episodes of the podcast and the show notes for more details on this episode's guest. For more inspiration, remember to check out the It's All Possibility playlist on Spotify, which contains a collection of upbeat, positive music I use for inspiration in my live performances. Until next time, live with passion and a perspective of possibility.